Good evening, everyone. This is John Haller with our next Prophecy Roundtable on technology, technocracy, transhumanism, AI, and all things technological and how this fits into end times Bible prophecy. I appreciate you joining us tonight. Again, I'm John Haller from Fellowship Bible Chapel in the Columbus, Ohio area. I have with me Patrick Wood from Arizona, Britt Gillette from Virginia, and Scott Townsend from California, and we'll be joined shortly by Pete Garcia at some point. So if you see another guy pop in, that's just Pete coming in. So we're just going to kind of have a broad, free-ranging discussion, just as a reminder. And by the way, if you're not hearing us, just tell us, and then we can panic about that. And don't try to fool us though, because we have AI watching you, and they will tell us if you're lying to us. But the bots will tell us if you're lying. But one of my goals in this, just to recap, I've spoken at prophecy conferences, as have the other guys, for many years, and one of the most enjoyable things of those conferences is the green room. And so for a long time, it's not unique to me, but I've wanted to have sort of green room discussions where we can just kind of sit and chat in an orderly manner, lightly moderated, and we can just kind of roll over some important subjects. So we've gotten this great group together. This is, I don't know, what is this, our fifth or sixth one that we've done? We appreciate you taking the time to watch. Again, we would ask you to like, share, subscribe, depending whether you're on FBC channel or Britt, I think you're streaming this on your YouTube channel, End Times Bible Prophecy. So let's just sort of get a general lay of the land. I'll start with Britt. And Britt, so you weren't able to join us about 4 weeks ago, but has anything happened in the realm of AI and technocracy since you last joined us?
Well, absolutely nothing at all, right?
Oh, okay. Well, then good evening, everyone.
Well, I guess we wrap up. Yeah, let's end in prayer.
Sure yeah.
Yeah, well, it is nice to be here and not be bedridden with the flu, which is what happened last time. But there's a whole host of things. Where do you want me to start?
You can start on anything that you want to start on. Okay. So you take the lead. I don't want you to start though with cryptocurrencies yet, but I do want to get to that eventually tonight.
Well, so at Oxford, we had researchers at Oxford actually achieve quantum teleportation between quantum processors. I think that's these developments in quantum computing. Earlier in the year, I said these seem to be coming every month, these blockbuster developments. Now it seems every week. And we're in this position where AI is formulating new designs and new breakthroughs from quantum computing, which is creating greater processing power for the AI to be able to come up. And it's the self-reinforcing loop that aids in this exponential advance of these technologies. So we're just continuing to see this. It's just unbelievable what we're seeing. I don't know if Scott, you nodded. Do you have anything to add?
I was nodding to acknowledge Pete coming into our room today. That's awesome. Hey, Pete. So, yeah, the quantum advancements, particularly what's top of mind for me is the advancement that Microsoft did. And I recall that for many, many years, Microsoft had the highest R&D expenditures corporately than any other corporation in the world for many, many years. And all of a sudden, pop comes this amazing leap in material sciences, where they have now invented a new type of material that allows for greater stability and density of quantum qubits on a chip. And they claim that there's 1 million qubits that are available in the size of, if you take your phone and cut it in half, that's about the size of these chips now. It's unbelievable, really. And so what they're claiming, of course, with quantum computers is vast, performance. And one of the things when you mentioned, Britt, about quantum teleportation, this is where the mind of these scientists really wanders into what I feel is very speculative areas. This is how they develop theories like, or proving that this is what proves, you know, the multiverse, because these states in between the on and off, you know, a qubit has both an on and an off state, but also something in between it. And they're thinking, and I've heard of scientists say that quantum computers are one of the reasons that they're so fast is because they're reaching across space time and they're harnessing compute resources in other parallel universes. So the amount of nonsense, of course, the point of this is no one can prove that. And so it is more, it demonstrates more faith on behalf of these scientists to basically go down these paths, claiming that they understand what's happening, then actually requires of being a Christian. So it's just, it's mind-numbing how they try to fool themselves and deceive themselves about this. They will never bend the knee to claim Christ as the creator. They just don't do it. So they will at the great white throne judgment, but they will not on this side of it. We should be praying for these scientists because it's a very dark place that they find themselves.
Yeah. So hang on a second here. I'm trying to, there we go. Now I go. Okay. So let's go to Pete. Pete, just sort of in general to get us started, what do you see happening in this space right now that you think is significant, prophetically significant? Are you there, Pete? You must have froze up. Patrick, why don't we go to you next?
I'm not. I was looking at Pete.
Pete, did you hear me? Okay, we'll get Pete the technical issue there. So Pat, why don't you go ahead and why don't you chime in here? We can look at
You bet.
The quantum aspect.
I think
the path of.
I didn't hear anything. It was all frozen.
Okay, can you? Okay, listen to Patrick, and then we'll come to you.
I was going to say, quantum computing is definitely a thing. It's not ready for prime time, and when it is, it probably will be used to augment the data centers that are already in existence, based on these super duper capacity chips from NVIDIA. And probably there'll be a combination between the two. They'll figure out how to offload certain calculations onto a quantum computer. It'll speed the whole thing up. But at this point, I think the big story in the room is all of these data centers being constructed around the country now. It's unbelievable how many are going up at the same time. And Texas has weighed in. Texas wants to lead the pack at this point. Apparently, they have so many applications in their country right now for data centers. I'm talking like multi-100,000 square feet facilities. They have enough capacity or enough request to need 30 nuclear reactors by 2030. Go figure. That's not going to happen, right? Not 5 years. But this just tells you the land rush at this point to implement these raw data centers. And when I say raw, I mean I'm talking just the processor, the capability of doing stuff with AI. When you listen to all of these people for instance, on YouTube, these experts in AI, there's several of these people, stellar reporting they do on AI, but they're talking mostly about the nuts and bolts, how things are done in AI right now. At this point, the whole field is moving into application. Finally, this is like the difference between theoretical science and applied science. Theoretical science happens in universities, labs, whatever, and somebody comes up with a theory. Well, we got the theory. Anybody want to do anything with it? Well, that's when applied science comes into the picture. That's at this point, that's the programming, the applications that are being created with AI as a base. This is they've gotten a product at this point from the point of view of applied science. Now it's rolling out into society everywhere, and you're seeing a plethora of applications now, just all over every day something drops. Major stuff.
Well, I know that, Patrick, I think I've mentioned this before. I get just a tremendous number of suggested computer program, AI programs, AI. Everything will make my life easier. Everything will make my life better. And I'll sort of throw this in there, and then we can kind of swerve off into or come back to it a little bit. But every day I have on my social media, mainly on X and Facebook or Meta, whatever they call it, I'll have 10 to 20 ads for legal AI research assistants. And they will always accompany this, a senior lawyer, male or female, obviously in their 50s, 60s, or 70s, that I use this, I rely on this. I don't need young attorneys anymore. And so I think, one, it seems to raise a lot of ethical considerations in law practice with putting all your stuff there into this large language model when you have client confidentiality and that sort of thing. And I don't think the ethics rules have caught up to that. But then it's also like, how do you train young lawyers anymore? And what's going to be the impact with, with employment and that sort of thing? And I know we want to talk about that tonight too. So Pete, what are your just general thoughts to start off? Are you unfrozen yet?
Yeah. No. Well, man, everything crashed right before I came on. Like 10 minutes before, everything was like nothing was working. So
that's because I posted your
say,
name on the title slide. I think that's what happened, and it found you.
Yeah. Well, all of this, what's the thing that's been striking me, even every time I hear the word or the phrase used, it strikes me as cold and calculating in a way. But every time they talk about the word efficient and how to make our systems more efficient, we know that's the purpose of Doge. We know that part of this efficiency is using artificial intelligence to find data inconsistencies and things that would have taken a human weeks and months on end to find. This thing can find it in a matter of minutes to seconds. And so everything is moving towards creating a more and more efficient system in which to live. And again, AI has been instrumental in that. But when we go to the world of Revelation 13, one of the things I think that gets overlooked is this actual the one man being able to control all buying and selling. And we talk about that control, but we don't really talk necessarily about the logistics of what that would entail. Because at its height, the Nazi Party in Germany was incredibly efficient in how they executed a number of their operations. And if you look at the Genghis Khan or Napoleon or the certain Roman legions at certain times, the whole thing with their success was based on logistics. And how do you make a world like that is so utterly efficient that one person can buy and sell, or one person can control all buying and selling? And I think that what we're seeing now with number 47 coming in is this. If anything else, it's going to be this incredible push towards the perfect, efficient system by which to run everything. We see a little bit of that with Elon Musk, and he wants to do this anything app or everything app. I don't know if that's what X will become one day, or it looks like it's heading that way with Grok and all the other features it has. But it looks like efficiency is going to be the driving theme behind everything that goes on this year and next year and potentially for the next 4 years. And that has got huge implications with how they're going to use artificial intelligence to manage multiple systems and bring everything online. And I don't know if that means America is the final system that everybody uses, but it seems like it's not just that we're seeing the groundwork being laid. I mean, we're seeing like the final touches being put on the system that's going to enslave the whole world.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about the sort of the efficiencies and Doge and the impact that it's having. So, and I hate to use the term play devil's advocate when we're talking about something like this, but you know what I mean when I say that, is that we have some difficult questions. So I was listening to I guess you would call him right wing. I'm not going to say his name. He's really swerved off into just absolute hatred of Jews and Israel. But he's got a popular, I guess you would call it a right wing channel. I know people who knew him when he lived in a foreign country, and they said he's very new age. But I was listening to him the other day, and he was because I like to torture myself, and because he usually makes me pretty upset. But he went into a very long discussion. And Patrick, I think he was with Maria Z. That's why I think that might have been who was interviewing him. And I think you know her, or you've met her, or we've run into her on different occasions. And he was saying that this artificial intelligence is incredible for his business. I'm not firing anybody, but it makes us so much more efficient, so much more organized, so great. And artificial intelligence is just the most fantastic thing. And it's helping us process mountains of information and do a better job at it and serve our customers better and make more money in the interim. And so I sort of see that in the private sector a lot now. And then I also see it in government with Doge and that type of thing. So just kind of chime in, guys. How do we draw the line on this? And I don't want to be, if you remember when the car came into being, there was a lot of complaint from, I mean, this is studied in business schools, the buggy whip manufacturers. You know, we're doing the internal combustion engine, and all the people that make buggy whips and saddles are going to be out of work. And so is this just another buggy whip moment, or is it something more? The floor is yours.
So I think this needs to be split into two halves almost.
Okay.
I see one half where what can we control as users of computer systems and phones? And I put a stake in the ground and started writing about AI intrusion on my Substack to help people understand, hey, this thing over here that they keep bugging you about using these features is actually a hook to try to get you to authorize AI on your desktop or mobile device. And that series has been well received. So there's the things that we can control, John. But on the other hand, there are things that we cannot control. And that would include self-service portals. We don't really, just wait until the voice assistant part of it gets a little more mature. It'll be much harder to distinguish when you get a phone call if you're actually talking to a person or not, unless there's explicit disclosure. Hey, I'm an AI, and I'm here to help you. Do you have a minute? Whatever that looks like. And the integration process of AI is actually not that difficult. I myself use AI coding assistants, and I'm integrating it to AI systems through software to do analysis of various types. I do it every day. So it's not like rocket scientists anymore. And because it's a low-hanging fruit, people get to uptake these technologies very, very quickly. And I think that for many reasons, I think we're just going to see a proliferation of these systems. And just because this has been a super big focus of mine the last 48 hours, I read a research paper that is beginning to disclose and push back on just how competent are AI large language models. And some of the researchers are kind of putting a little bit of cold water on the narrative that, AGI and ASI, that would be artificial general intelligence and superintelligence, is actually something on the near term. They don't think that AI is as smart as it thinks it is, and they base it on the testing suites that they do. Yeah, they've resolved in a very scientific method, incidentally. These are researchers themselves that have run test after test to really assess, does AI actually think? Or is it an autonomic response, like a nerve? You hit your knee and your leg pops out, that little test you do. And as it turns out, there's a lot more of, I would say, pre-programmed, rote sequencing of, if they'd said these three things, and then the fourth one must be this, this, or this, and then they use probability to do that. Again, I'm writing on this, AI fundamentals on my Substack right now about, can AI be inhabited by demons? I encourage everyone to see that. But the thing is, I don't think that it's thinking like we would call thinking. It cannot do leaps of intuition. It's very rigorous in how it puts the math and statistics, the tokens, and the neural network part of it together in order to get the weights correctly when it comes out with the best solution. And that's all it is. It's a mathematical brute force operation. And so I believe these researchers are correct. And when they published what I consider to be a very rigorous analysis of how do these LLMs think? Is it really thinking? And they've shot holes through a lot of the narrative that we hear from folks like Sam Altman at OpenAI and others, that keep perpetuating this myth of AI intelligence is overwhelming and it's almost here. And well, I don't know if that's true. So it's very, very interesting what's coming in this. And by the way, this is just a general statement. It just underscores how much we have to be making these investments in AI safety and post-training safety in order to validate that the AI is properly set up correctly. Otherwise, you can get some very scary things coming out of it.
Okay, hey, Britt, why don't we run over to you and let you chime in a little bit here?
Yeah, I agree with what Scott's saying. I think the concern is and always has been, it's human beings in possession of the tool of AI rather than a concern over AI itself. This, as Pete said, this leads to ruthless efficiency where governments, what we're seeing with Doge, and I think this is the big problem I have with Doge. They're doing a lot of good things, that uncovering corruption, that I think is good. But it's the object is to make government more efficient rather than limit the size and scope of government. And so we're seeing government adopt these tools, whether it's AI in place of real people making decisions, or whether it's the use of digital IDs, tokenized assets, central bank digital currencies, that give governments unprecedented power and the ability to abuse their citizens with this power. And so, again, if AI can make these decisions so much quicker than humans, then human beings can make those intuitive leaps to tell the AI what to do and how to weed things out. And as Patrick mentioned, there's this proliferation of data centers going up everywhere. They're collecting every bit of data on us. And John, you mentioned getting these ads for AI legal assistance. So they know, well, you have a background as a lawyer, you're reading about AI a lot. Maybe you're trying to get AI to help you legally and help improve your law practice. And this is a news story that just sort of went under the radar, but Google has gone back to the practice of gathering people's fingerprints on their phones as an identification to across multiple devices, so that they're gathering all of this data, and they're pulling it on each of us and building these profiles. And so the idea that government is going to have all of this data at their disposal and enormously efficient systems put in place, and they're not going to use that to abuse the citizenry, to persecute political opponents, is, I believe that's obviously that's what's coming. That's what's going to happen. It's what the Bible tells us is coming, is going to happen. And we're seeing that foundation put in place right now, just as Pete was saying.
Patrick? Thanks, Britt.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I'm a little conflicted with the information that I have discovered along the way in my 48 years of studying globalization. This business of technocracy at this point is coming to a head. And the reason I say that, all these people that are surrounded the Trump administration, especially technocrats, all people like Elon Musk and Ramaswamy and David Sachs, Mark Andreessen, et cetera, all of these people are technocrats. They've been hidden for 45 years. They never came to the party. They never wanted to be visible, if you will. All of a sudden, they're in plain sight everywhere you look, stealing headline after headline after headline of what they're going to do to America. I don't trust this at all at this point, because these people have had an agenda of all these years. Now it appears that the whole movement is reaching critical mass, and they're going for the gold at this point. They have enough horsepower now with AI, especially. This was not possible in the first Trump administration, for sure. But now that AI has advanced to the point it has, you have people like Elon Musk now, for instance. He said he wants to reform government, and he wants to use AI. This is coming out very clearly. Many people are writing about it, even this week, that he's going to use AI to replace all the functions that are lost to people moving on or getting fired, whatever. That means we possibly could have algorithms running the system of government in America. OpenAI just released a product 2 weeks ago called OpenAI Gov, G-O-V, original name, right? But that's what they said. They're probably going to sell it for buku bucks to the government. But OpenAI Gov is going to be a secure system that can take all the data, all the sensitive data that government has in its power right now to work with, and upload the whole thing into the cloud for processing with AI, advanced AI, agentic AI at that point. This has never been done in the history of our country, of course, but at this point, all of the data, sensitive data, is going to be exposed to AI. And data is the new oil, basically. It's all about data. So we see at this point, it looks like there's a coup d'etat going on right now before our eyes, I think. And AI is playing a huge role in it. And we're going to see this accelerate. You mentioned accelerationism, John. We should talk about that along the way as well. But this is one of the underlying philosophies that these technocrats have. They're trying to accelerate everything. They're trying to put the pedal to the metal, so to speak, to get this thing done. In other words, they're giving us the bum's rush at this point to get it done. They have to
from one respect, Patrick, because they say that they're falling behind on Agenda 2030.
Yes.
And so here you go. Here's the accelerant. It's like throwing kerosene on a fire, right? So that's big. You used a word called agentic, and I want to make sure our audience understands what that word means, okay? So there's AI like you would use in a chatbot or a website that has a screen that you can interact with, or your phone, for example. Or there's, so in that case, when you're dealing with a chatbot type application, it's you and the chatbot, and you're sending questions and prompts, and you're receiving responses back from it. The relationship between you and that AI is one-on-one. You're logged in, you're using it, it's you and it, right? Agentic means that there are, think of it like a distributed network of AIs. You can have 1 to 1 million AIs that are deployed and able to work autonomously on specific tasks. Okay. This is where, when we hear the terms from Google and Microsoft and others about digital assistants, especially from Apple, they're coming up strong right now. That is what they're talking about. They're talking about agents. And one of the things that is distinguished with agents is you command the agent as to what you want, and that goes into an orchestrator, and the orchestrator analyzes what your request is, and then it assigns workloads to other agent AIs, and they go do the task, and then they come back with the answer together. So agentic frameworks are ways of getting a massive boost of parallelism that allows, we've been talking about acceleration and AI for a while here. What you can do with one AI in an hour, you can do with 100 AIs in 10 seconds, right? So that is another form of acceleration, and it's the agent part of it that concerns me a lot from a security point of view, because it's harvesting your personal data on your device so that it can give you personalized recommendations for restaurants you like, what style of food you want, what your food allergies are. It has to know you. And then one of the objectives of products like Microsoft Recall and others that are coming up is just that. They're going to analyze this, and they're going to have a form of profile that is maintained by AI in order to, quote, make the recommendations and things that it's trying to do relevant to you. And that's just a massive security and privacy problem, which is why it gets my attention when I see news about that in various apps that we use today. So I just wanted to backtrack on what the agentic word means. Okay.
So, Scott, I just want to make sure I understand. When you're talking about, is this where the whole idea of AI agents comes in?
Yes. Agentic is the technical term for the agent experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, is this also related to these things that I read about digital twins? Is that also within this realm, or am I mixing?
That's a great question. Concepts? I would like everyone's opinion on this, frankly.
Yeah, I think so. I listened to a video recently on digital twins that brought in the aspect of using agents to populate the digital twin with data, different types of data. So apparently this is going to be fundamental to the proliferation of digital twins, or twinning, as they say. If people don't understand what a digital twin is, imagine a building that has elevators and has sensors, light switches, the air conditioner, all this stuff is people, cameras and people movement, et cetera. The building can be viewed as like a living organism, or you can take all this thing and put it in silica to give you a representation of the building in 3D, hologram, whatever. with all of its systems layered in place, where at that point, it's if they have enough control over that digital twin, they can do anything that they want to do to the digital twin without affecting the original copy of the in reality. The idea, for instance, if you wanted to see what's the effect of changing the temperature 2 degrees in one floor, would it affect anybody else? How would it affect the whole load of the building, et cetera? How much would it cost? Would it lower cost, raise cost, et cetera? Well, once they determine what the effect on the digital twin is, then they can turn around and commit those changes back to the physical thing, the building in this case. Now, digital twins are being used to model human beings as well, and even buildings, of course, and even whole cities. In fact, there's a project on a global basis at this point. Go figure. You have to figure. Yeah, this is where the whole thing is going. Somebody is working on a global twin right now, not just city, not just state, not just a country, but the whole world. That's stunning, but they're not going to get anywhere at this point. Probably there's too big of a capacity. They need more capacity with what they have right now. But nevertheless, you get the idea. Agents are going to be the thing that makes that all possible. But and it's going to be like crabgrass grows in your yard very slowly, and you all of a sudden you have a lawn full of weeds. This stuff is growing so fast that nobody can keep track of it. That's the problem. It's future shock on steroids. Even the people who are committed to listening to this stuff 24/7 can't keep up with the changes going on.
The military implications are frightening.
Well, I'll touch on that briefly. Israel has been releasing the IDF or report assessing how the IDF responded on October 7th. As we know, the response was terrible. And I had gotten information a long time ago about what happened on October 7th was that Hamas got its hands on digital data for the people that lived along the Gaza border. So to the extent that they were able to determine how people moved through the buildings in a kibbutzim, which doors were secure and locked, which were unlocked, where people were, and then they were also able to sort of project out how the bases along the border would be staffed. And this is Gaza. We think of Gaza as being kind of primitive, but through their masters or their allies or whatever, they were able to get this data. And today it was coming out that they even took information from the social media posts of the female soldiers who were the watchers along the border in the guard towers and analyzed that and then used that to foment a battle plan, which was pretty effective. If it had been executed on by others, we would be having a much different conversation right now. So this has real world implications, is what I'm trying to say. So maybe we should talk a little bit about safety. So at the World Government Summit about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, a financial person named Pippa Malmgren gave a fairly, she was on a panel and she gave some statements that I think everybody's played and seen them over and over again. And essentially what she said was, everything's going to be in the blockchain, but what we need is a digital bill of rights. So digital bill of rights, Patrick talked about safety, Britt and others have talked about safety. And so we've been sitting here now for a good 18 months in an intense development of AI. Everybody wetting their pants, so to speak, over, well, we need to address safety or the world's going to come to an end. And I'm not seeing it
No.
having been done. And so where's the digital bill of rights? Where are the safety teams? Rather, in the alternative, or what really happened was, like, OpenAI fired their safety team, as I recall.
They resigned. Yeah.
Or they
Yeah.
resigned. Okay.
Yeah.
So discuss among yourselves, what do we do? How do we deal with this?
Well,
There's no safety.
If we think about safety and security and the necessity of what drives those, we can just look back on our brief history and look at things going on right now to get a picture of what it's going to look like in the future. Doge is exposing all of these organizations like USAID and all the grifting and everything going on, but these agencies have been around for decades. I kind of think that this was a necessary crisis that needed to be exposed in order for this ruthless efficiency to be introduced at the right time in the right place. And obviously this is all in hindsight. We look back and think, well, surely the people that first started grifting through these different agencies and found themselves, they're congressmen or senators or whoever, making a salary of under 200,000 now are worth 30-40 million dollars. Well, how did that happen? In just a short time on a government service or civil government members salary. How did they make so much money? Well, maybe that they knew the grifting was so bad and so extreme that they figured the gig was going to be up anyways. But then Trump came in 2016 and surprisingly shocked the system, and they were trying to keep their power. People are more sensitive about what they're most sensitive about. They're more serious about what they're most sensitive about. They will fight and protect those things to keep those things secret. So these systems have been allowed to languish in fraud, waste, and abuse. And boom, Trump wins this term, brings in this new "let's clean the government up" kind of thing, and now he has the tools to do it through artificial intelligence. And the people that know how to do that, know how to work those systems. That was the crisis. The crisis was existed in order to allow for this new level of draconian, what comes out of this. Same thing that happened after 9/11. The Patriot Act was written back in the early 90s by Biden and Daschle, Senators Biden and Daschle. It was a Homeland Omnibus terror bill. And it was so draconian that they couldn't get it passed even after the Oklahoma City bombing and all that took place. They still couldn't get it passed. So it went back on the shelf. And after 9/11, John Ashcroft dusted off, changed some dates and some names, and boom, we have the Patriot Act was passed into law in 30 days. I think what's possibly that could come out of what we're seeing right now, because since AI, it's kind of like the Wild West right now. Everybody's racing to get to AGI first. What if the next crisis isn't a cyber attack or a pandemic or anything like that, but what if it's the where AI gets into this breakout mode where it's uncontrollable growth? I think it's called recursive self-improvement or something like that. And it's where AI can go from where it is right now into AGI or even at some point ASI. And that's a fear that I know that a lot of people that study this are concerned about, that we may reach that breakout point. And what if that is the crisis? What if quantum, some new breakthrough in quantum comes through, and it can hack any password, any code thing or whatever, and basically every government secret's going to be laid to bear. You talk about what kind of crisis that would trigger. There's any number of scenarios that could happen that create the necessary crisis for a new digital Bill of Rights that will have to be enforced in law. And maybe the guy that stops this AI breakout, and this is just a hypothetical scenario, but what if the guy himself is imbued or infused with technology, so he is truly like the world's first transhumanist, and because he has this technology inside him, he's able to stop this breakout point amongst all these different competing AI systems that are going on around the world. So that could also solidify some type of global digital bill of rights. And we talk about ethics. Ethics is going to be critical in this, because how are you going to make a AI that's not presenting any particular one, worldview? It's not pretending, it's not projecting the American worldview, and it's not projecting the Chinese or the Russian or whoever. What worldview is it going to present? And so then you go through all of the downward streams on that. And ultimately, I think it's going to come back to this efficiency, this idea of efficiency. And that, to me, is when you look at a guy that can control all buying and selling in the world, he has some amazing system put in place that he's able to do that. And it's going to scream efficiency.
Well, I know, and I, as a lawyer, I watch what these guys are saying about their systems and their projections. And as someone who did some securities fraud litigation in my career, you have to, when you're a public company, you got to be very careful what you say, because there are lawyers out there, and now AI enhanced lawyers apparently are going to think about suing you. Maybe this is a good place to pivot, and I want Britt to start our discussion off on this, because in the initial executive orders that came out from President Trump, he said no CBDCs issued by the U.S. central bank. But then there's been, at least from my perspective, a huge push towards cryptocurrencies, which my understanding of cryptocurrencies is I'm not making any of it, because I'm not sure I understand the whole thing. But so, sort of give us a kind of a baseline to discuss CBDCs, cryptocurrency, blockchain, and where that's going. And keep in mind, did somebody say that the EU, maybe it was in the chat, the EU is going to issue a central bank digital currency by October of this year. So have at it, Britt.
Sure. So you mentioned, so one of Trump's first executive orders was to come out and say, the United States will not have a central bank digital currency. But all that is a form of cryptocurrency controlled by the central bank. We could end up having one, they just don't call it a central bank digital currency, because, as we've mentioned, the Trump administration has a lot of people that believe in these ideas within it. And one of those is Elon Musk. And Elon Musk has talked about putting all US spending on the blockchain. And the reason for this is he's claimed, well, this will put everything out in the open so that everybody will be able to see where every penny of government spending goes to. But then the question becomes, in order to put that government spending on the blockchain, the government can't be spending as it currently does. It would have to use some sort of cryptocurrency in order to do that. And if the government's doing that, well, they're spending it to somebody who must receive that. And so it sets the stage for a central bank digital currency, even if you don't call it that, even if it's some other type of cryptocurrency. Now, cryptocurrencies, there are different types. So there are centrally controlled cryptocurrencies that you could have, and then there's decentralized cryptocurrencies, which is what Bitcoin is. So Bitcoin is distributed across a network, and that means that it's locked in place so that more can't just be issued on a whim by some central authority that controls it, which is what we would see with central bank digital currency. And those rules, when you have a centralized cryptocurrency like that, the rules governing it can be changed by whoever's in control. And so we are seeing that. The European Central Bank, the president of the European Central Bank, Christine Lagarde, came out. She had a press conference just 6 days ago. And she said, we've been working on this central bank digital currency for several years, going back to my predecessor, and we're going to roll it out in October of this year. And of course, she said, well, there's a lot of campaigning we have to do in order to, we can't just do this. It has to be legislated. We need the European Commission to sign off, the European Council, European Parliament. What she doesn't mention is that she and her colleagues at the European Central Bank sit on board the European Council, and all of the people on those different organizations believe exactly as she does, that this is needed. And she came out and said, well, if you're a skeptic, it's never been more important than now to do that. And they never explain why, other than they want it and they want to have this control. And if they succeed in rolling this out, and I have no doubt that they will, there's no one standing in the way. She mentioned the stakeholders that were involved in this, and she mentioned those players, the European Commission, the European Council, European Parliament. She did not notably mention Europe's citizens, right? Anybody that lives in Europe. Well, you're not a stakeholder in this. You're going to get it. And they're going to roll it out. And they claim, well, this doesn't replace cash. It complements cash. You'll still have cash. And this is a common tactic where they do these things and they slow roll this out. But they've already implemented different measures to eliminate cash. So in some countries within the EU, you cannot transact in more than 1,000 euros. And they're set to put a cap this year on making every country be uniform, so that the most you could spend is 10,000. And then of course they'll lower that once they get it implemented. And of course inflation makes that amount irrelevant over due time anyway. And we're seeing this across the world, countries putting limits on cash, and they claim, well, cash is used by criminals, people who are laundering money. And then she turns around and says, but all these surveillance questions that people have about central bank digital currency is completely overblown. We're not going to be tracking these transactions, right? And you think, when did they think we were born? Yeah. Because here they're cracking down on cash because they say criminals use it, money launderers use it, tax evaders use it. But we're going to create a digital currency that would give us the ability to surveil every single transaction that takes place. But we're not going to track those, right? We're going to let those be used anonymously so that those criminals could use them. No, they are absolutely going to track every single transaction. And this is programmable. Again, a centralized authority can change the rules as they see fit. And they could say, well, we already see in the European Union where people are facing jail time for simply liking a post on social media. So once they control your means of spending, they can simply program that to, well, you know what, John, you liked a post we didn't want you to like. So to just let you know how much we don't like it, your central bank digital currency won't work outside of a 1 mile radius of your home for the next month. And at the end of that month, we hope you've learned your lesson. If you haven't, well, then, maybe we'll cut it off altogether. And so this is not the mark of the beast system, guys, but it is indistinguishable in function and capability from the mark of the beast system, and being able to control who can buy or who can sell. And if this actually comes into being in October in the European Union, all freedom and liberty in that area is lost. There's no going back. Because when you couple this with all the other things that are going on, and I want to go back to what Patrick said about digital twins. The key is they're doing this on human beings. They're doing this on us. A couple of months ago, the New York Times put out a story about the CIA had developed chatbots. And aren't they so clever? They have chatbots that are digital twins of all the world leaders, so they can try to anticipate how a world leader would react in a given situation, because they're doing the same thing to all of us. That's how it can anticipate what ads we should see when we look on the computer or when we turn on the TV. It can recommend the program that we most want to watch. It's tracking all of this data from us, from our fingerprints to our neighbors' doorbell cameras to wherever we've walked. just as you were saying, John, all these people that were walking around near the Gaza border, they tracked all of that, they retained all of that information. They build a profile and they anticipate, well, who's likely to be our political opponents? And then they can just simply cut off their ability to buy or sell. This is going to lead to absolute tyranny wherever it is implemented. And unfortunately, from what we read in the Bible, this is going to be implemented on a global scale during the tribulation.
Britt, I have a question for you. I remember probably a year and a half ago or so, the Bank of International Settlement CEO basically said, we are the central bank digital currency, as though, which remind our audience that it's the BIS that settles all of the reserve currencies in the world. Every country has one, and they all flow, the money flows through the Bank of International Settlement. So the question is, do we know yet what role the BIS has in this statement from Christine Lagarde?
I didn't hear anything directly in Christine Lagarde's statement. However, there is a project called Project Icebreaker that the Bank of International Settlements put out probably 2 years ago now, where they talked about building a platform, a standard for central bank digital currencies around the world. And they had multiple countries that were in that program that were following that standard. And the key was to roll out that standard so that you could have cross-border transactions. So if you've got Japanese central bank digital currency and I've got United States central bank digital currency, well, the facilitator between our transaction would be the Bank of International Settlements. So by default, the Bank of International Settlements, just as you said, would sit atop of that entire system and be able to control the whole thing.
Yeah, that was my theory of how they can have different personas or branding exercises with a specific country's, CBDC. They can call it whatever they want to. It's just a brand. It's a label with a logo on it. But in the blockchain, it's all a common program interface that allows them to eventually deprecate each of the countries' individual CBDCs and roll it up into the one that we know about in Revelation 13. So that's what I believe is going to happen eventually. So I would agree with the statement that architecturally, it's all pretty much the same, so that they can roll it up to the actual worldwide currency at some future point.
So how do we? So I want to go to Patrick, because Patrick's written a lot about technocracy and everything, and it seems like this is if I understand what you've been saying, and I read your news updates at technocracy.news every day, and I think, okay, I'm going to go play golf because I don't have to worry about all of this stuff then. But it seems like this is a technocrat's dream, what we're seeing, because a guy like Musk, who comes from a technocratic family, his father was a huge technocrat, and there's this good stuff that they're doing. They're rooting out corruption. They're bringing in cryptocurrencies. I mean, the United States government had, I think his name is David Sachs, a cryptocurrency czar. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
That's right.
And now he says he doesn't own cryptocurrencies, but Trump's been pushing cryptocurrencies. And my understanding is, like, and I'm not sure, I'll be honest with you, I don't understand how it works exactly. There are these mem coins and these other things that were issued. And and I think it's accurate, Trump made $385 million in the cryptocurrency market the other day. And it's always interesting to me. They talk about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, and this is a new thing, but then they always price it in dollars. That's kind of interesting. But Patrick, why don't you kind of give us some ideas as to where is this going, and what do you think based on your historical analysis?
We can see the historical and the fact of history. We can analyze what these people think. They've been open to an extent. We've been able to understand the philosophy behind their agenda. And I can guarantee you at this point, this is my strong opinion at this point, this whole business of Musk and other technocrats, David Sachs, the rest, and the whole rest of them, they are presenting a different agenda to the MAGA movement and the populist movement in America. When I say disingenuous, they're using language that resonates with populists, but they've changed the definition of what they're talking about in the first place. To them, it means a different thing other than how we would take it out here as citizens. This is not, you couldn't call this necessarily a psyop, but this is much more than just that at this point. This is a coup d'etat. The people behind all of this technocratic meme, starting with Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance, his primary protege, to people like Mark Andreessen, David Sachs, etc. All these people, they're prosecuting an agenda that calls for the destruction of America. Flat out. They want to destroy the fabric of our nation. They're anti-Constitution. Go figure. I mean, they give lip service along the way, but the Constitution they're talking about is not the Constitution that I know and I read even as a child. This whole thing is disingenuous at this point. That's why I think that's part of the reason I'm sounding the alarm for sure. I think we're being set up to take a huge fall as a country. I think, unfortunately, the people who've been following along with the populist movement, they don't have a clue as what's happened. They're getting it now, maybe as they look at what's going on more clearly. But at this point, once all of the data has been from our government, when all that data is fed into AI, it's going to train AI. And I don't care what you analyze, well, how much money is Musk going to save us with Doge? Taxpayers. Well, maybe how about $1 trillion? Let's say $2 trillion. Well, that pales in comparison to the value that they're going to get, the AI czars are going to get out of all this data that's being fed into AI to be turned around to be trained. This is beyond just conflict of interest at this point. These people are going for the gold right now. They have the upper hand. Like I said, they never appeared in public as a group for 45 years. But all of a sudden, boom, here they are. Even people like Washington Post, Jeff Bezos just changed the editorial policy at the Washington Post, for Pete's sake, and he's going to brown nose Trump now. What? That's just inconceivable. His editorial staff is leaving. He's got rid of didn't mean to get rid of paying subscribers, but his paid subscriber base is just getting decimated right now because he's doing it. But you see this whole technocrat meme, all these people have all of a sudden switched sides of the political aisle, indicating to me they don't care about politics at all. They're going to go wherever they can get traction. At this point, they can get traction. I think they're concluding they can get traction under Trump. And I don't care whether Trump is complicit or not. It just really doesn't matter at this point. These people have their claws in our government right now. That's the fact. They're going to use AI to restructure our government. They're going to use AI as a paradigm to play out what Mark Andreessen recently said, that AI is going to crash wages. This is the guy that's at the table with the president picking all these people in the first place. Really? He said nobody paid attention that he said this on X. Yes, AI, he says, is going to crash wages. How does that fit into the make America great paradigm? That doesn't make any sense. However, you see this playing out with the government now, as all of these jobs are going to be accessed, some probably rightly so, others maybe not. But the point is, they're all going to be replaced with AI. And that's, at this point, in their mind, that's a fait accompli.
That when you said crashing the United States, I'll just remind everyone that one of I think it was number 8 on the 10 objectives of the Agenda 2030 was that the United States would no longer be a superpower.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to ask yourself, okay, what are the levers that they're going to tip over in order to achieve that goal? And, certainly what you're talking about, Patrick, in my mind, I was thinking financial collapse or something else, because we cover that a lot in this group. But I wonder if it just isn't, like you said, an AI technocracy taking over, and the collapse is the prelude to the new digital currency that is going to be required in order to transact. And guys, I'm reminded we should probably have a commercial break at some point, because this is very tough news and tough thinking. And we know what the Bible says about the trajectory of these technologies. And we also know what that implies. You just have to close your eyes and pray and think to yourself, Lord, you are close. You are right at the door. And we need to understand when we see these things so clearly, and we can, I think it's really important for us to work on, I always say, work on sanctification, work on preparing to be the bride of Christ, work on pouring yourself out for the benefit of others and for the work that has to be done and to be about the Father's business. This is what we're talking about. This is why we continue to talk and encourage people not to break fellowship with the church, not to isolate yourself. You're going to need help and support from others. And it's very, very important that we get over ourselves and our petty little squabbles, and to lay down conduct unbecoming, and to really think about what it looks like to stand in front of the Lord. I mean, that's where we are, in my head at least, trying to make sure that I do everything possible to finish well. And so I think the word of encouragement here is in our commercial break, so to speak. And I'd love to hear from you guys too. But I think if this isn't confirming the convergence and setup of the things that we know are coming in Revelation 13, I literally do not understand what could possibly be more forceful in terms of in your face news that we're seeing today than what we're actually seeing and reporting on today.
Yes.
Well,
there was a time in my high. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
There was a time in my life when I was fairly young. I ran into difficulty in my life, and I was in a position to where I couldn't go anywhere except look up. Literally laying on the floor, looking up for God. Here I am, take me, the sort of thing. That experience, however, has taught me something along the way. I was ready at that point to lay everything down, everything I had, car keys, clothes, whatever, my belongings, and just head out. Lord, you'll take me somewhere and you'll take care of me. he didn't have to do that. Nevertheless, kind of got out of that trouble. But nevertheless, these days, this is coming back to me, where I want to wake up every day at this point, and we have a comfortable life. We're not rich for sure, not by any stretch of imagination, but we have a comfortable life, and God has been good to us along the way. We have a good car, nice, three bedroom house, not fancy, whatever, but we have what we need, and we're happy that we have it. Nevertheless, I ask the question almost every day now, Lord, before I get to bed, even before I get out of bed, Lord, is this the day where you will require me to lay everything down and walk out in some direction because it's all lost for whatever reason? This is going to be evident to people going forward, for Christians especially. It doesn't mean you have to nevertheless, just burn everything. I'm not saying that, but if we have a mindset that if you can release all of your worldly goods and trust the Lord, that He will take you wherever He wants to take you at that point without those worldly goods. A lot of people around the world have this issue. Of course, they don't know that there's going to be a new tomorrow for them. They wake up thinking, I might get killed this day. But we're in America. This is a foreign thought. I think we're going to see more of this as people get in tune with what's going on in our country, with all this business of the uncertainty on digital currencies versus current currency we have with dollars, etc. I think people will start saying that prayer, Lord, is this the day that you will require all of my worldly goods in order to serve you somewhere else or somehow without these worldly goods? Just my opinion.
Let's flip over to Pete Garcia and ask Pete to kind of weigh in on this. I'm not sure why I'm not showing up here all of a sudden, but hang on. No, I'm not sure what happened here. So I will. There we go.
Not
I
me.
must have clicked on the wrong thing. So Pete, build on what Patrick said, or take us a different direction if you want.
Well, I think, I agree with what everybody's talking about here, and this exponential growth, and not just growth within the industry of AI itself, but the exponential distribution of it amongst so much of our devices. So much of what we do now is online. And it seems like Microsoft and all your laptops and your phone, everything is automatically putting artificial intelligence into all of these systems, whether we want to or not. One of the things that Trump talked about that I thought was interesting was getting rid of the IRS and using tariffs as a means to compensate. But I think one of the reasons that he's even floating that idea of getting rid of the IRS is because and he may or may not know this, but I think this is going to be one of those groundwork things that's going to be laid, is that with artificial intelligence being able to run, let's just say 60% of the government, the bureaucratic stuff, and then if you would take that and apply that across to the Pentagon and apply that across to all the different departments of energy and BLM, everything else, I think that that is going to put a lot of people out of work. That's going to create a crisis, which is where the universal basic income will be floated in. And eventually everybody will have to be on this UBI type of program. And I'm just saying, if everything holds true and things continue today as they will tomorrow, kind of in a normalcy bias pattern, things from here to the next 2-3 years, you're going to see if you have 100% of the U.S. population workforce, that's going to be starting to shrink down because AI is going to be implemented into so many other things that humans aren't going to be necessary at every single station that they used to be. So that is going to create a percentage of Americans that aren't working. And then those percentages of Americans that aren't working that are disenfranchised by artificial intelligence will qualify for this universal basic income. And this, obviously, it's going to be tracked by the government anyway, so they don't need to, you don't need an IRS. I mean, you just have a software program that's going to automatically deduct whatever it needs to deduct, and they're going to see the efficiency in the brute force efficiency and how this all is done. And I don't know that America is the final stage, or if there's the regionalized imperial system that may come about afterwards, but they're going to inherit this system, whoever the government is after the rapture, and they are going to make swift use of this to basically wrap everybody into this system like a giant spider web that you can't escape from. And not only will you have artificial intelligence, but then you'll have this new introduction of spiritual or synthetic spiritualism, where all of your AI agents or whatever now can be your closest confidant, can become, and for people that have been isolated for the last 40, 50 years because of how the internet is basically, and social media has basically started to segregate people and make us all kind of little islands of one everywhere across the world. Even in crowded rooms, people aren't talking, they're just looking at their phones. And we begin to isolate ourselves through these systems. That's going to be absolutely used against people to be brought into this one world system, this one system that is going to tie everything together, because now everything that your identity is now wrapped up into everything online, or everything with your cryptocurrency market, or your stocks, or everything, businesses and whatnot, is so much of it is tied into the digital world. So the Sentient World Simulation Program was what began back in Purdue University, between the government and Purdue, that created a twin world. And that was 2004, 2005, and it's changed names since then. It's like the synthetic enhanced artificial environment or something. But it's still ongoing, and they use it for predictive analysis. They use it for wargaming. Everybody on, presumably, that has a digital footprint is also got an avatar in this other system, this other world. I have an avatar in this other world that's traveling and mimicking all of these things that my social media and my government travel card or my credit card or my airline miles or whatever the case is. It's going to know where I'm going based off of my digital footprint. And I think that they're probably in the final stages right now of running all of these different scenarios. And I think Pat's right that the technocrats who have been hiding in the shadows for the last 40 years now recognize that this is the opportunity. This is the moment. I don't know if they want to call it singularity, but this is getting close to that stage where they can take over everything. And I think they might, if obviously we don't know exactly how this is all going to shake out, but we know God's going to intervene. There's going to be a rapture of the church. There's going to be a massive coalition that marches against Israel, Gog and Magog, and those are wiped out. And that seems to leave a vacuum that some post Magog world, whatever that world looks like at that point, now that's going to be the powerhouse that rises up. And they have this system that we see right now in place, and they're just going to roll right into it. And it's just going to work out for them beautifully for 7 years and then horribly for the rest of eternity.
Well, so I want to go into a couple of other areas. A friend sent us a AI church. Maybe we can close up with that tonight, but I'm trying to think of where I wanted to go. We brought up early armed forces. Oh, I know what it was. So the other day we circulated a couple videos. If you all want to go look at them, you can go to the War Room, Steve Bannon's War Room Rumble channel. and there was I can't remember the guy's name, and Joe Allen talking about the singularity. And the one guy, his website I think is bombthrower.com, and he said, "We've achieved the singularity. It's already here." Joe Allen says, "No, it's not." So, first of all, somebody explain the singularity to us and whether you think we're there. So, jump in, whoever wants to jump in.
I'll take a stab at it. So, to me, the singularity is, if you think of our technology as growing exponentially, the singularity would be the point on that exponential curve where we go vertical, meaning we can't imagine what's beyond that point because the transformation is just so rapid. And so, based on that definition, and that's part of the problem here, is there's a lot, the word singularity is being thrown about a lot, but there's no agreed upon definition among the people who are doing that. And so I would say, if somebody has to tell you, oh no, the singularity has occurred, well, it probably hasn't occurred, right? Because this is going to be an event that's so big that everybody will know. It's similar to Jesus saying, don't pay attention to these people saying the Messiah has come. When I come, it's going to be seen. Everybody's going to know, meaning at the second coming at the end of the tribulation, every eye will see. There will be no doubt that it's him coming back. So the singularity, we're approaching it based on what's going on. And I think what's the issue we have here is with the exponential change that's taking place. They say we're on that exponential curve, but the issue is we've always been on the exponential curve since the moment that Adam and Eve left the Garden of Eden. Because when you look at an exponential curve, it appears flat and linear in the early stages. So if you look over there to the left, it appears incremental advances are being made, but they're actually exponential. But it's growing from such a small base, it doesn't appear to be. But when, and we've talked before about the eyedropper and the stadium. So the left part of that curve is the single eyedrop, and then 2 eye drops of water, right? And then 4 eye drops of water. And it appears that that's growing linearly, but it's growing exponentially. And so that's what's been going on for all of time. But somewhere in the last 200 years, we started to climb that curve, and now it's really ramping up. And we are approaching that point where the curve goes vertical. And personally, I believe that Jesus will return before that point. We may get very close to it going vertical, but I do not see humanity going past that point without Jesus coming back.
Let me add something about going vertical. I did some calculations yesterday for another show, I think. Nevertheless, it's estimated at this point that AI is advancing, doubling every 3.5 months at this point. That's stunning for sure. In other words, the capabilities, the announcements, et cetera, they're all leapfrogging and coming up with new techniques, et cetera. So it's estimated it's doubling every 3.5 months. Now, if President Trump was on January 29th was inaugurated, and we start doubling at 3.5 times or 3.5 months for a double, by the time his administration is done in 4 years, if it's just linear progression at this point, AI will be more than 4,000 times more powerful than it is right now. And however, it's not arithmetic probably at this point. Almost everybody understands there's going to be more acceleration, more gas given to it, if you will, and it might back up maybe every 3 months, for instance. That would be what 30% increase in speed. if that takes place, even conservatively, by the time the Trump administration is over, it will have doubled 32,000 times from where it is right now. This is stunning. This is almost vertical at this point, because we know the AI is so capable right now with all the data centers that they're building, and there's going to be more. You can see where this is going to go. We might not have life as we had before in 4 years. So, this crazy stuff.
That, by the
Yeah.
way, is a NVIDIA presentation that Jensen Huang, the CEO of and founder of NVIDIA, used a few months back, showing how just their chips are accelerating so quickly. And he was talking about, a 1,000-fold increase, but then a 1,000-fold increase, increasing 1,000 times beyond that, which is 1,000,000 times beyond what it was. And I think there's been some good questions in the chat, like, how long can this go on?
That's the
we're
Tower
talking
of Babel
Tower of
question.
Babel type stuff.
Yeah, it is, for sure.
And,
So that's what I think, John. That's where I've reduced it right now. Tremendous change. And I do believe that there's a checkpoint. We already know that the rapture is a predetermined point in time. It was established before creation. Lord knew exactly when. And I think that there's an element, just personally speaking, as I've thought and prayed about it, I think that there's going to be a major shaking of our status quo. The normalcy bias that Britt mentioned just a few minutes ago is going to vaporize. There is no more, normal. And I think that the shaking in the church specifically is designed to awake the bride. And it'll do two things. It will awake a remnant bride, is probably the best way to characterize that. And it will be a winnowing fork for those that are cultural Christians but aren't really saved, according to John 3. So I think that there's drastic change coming. But like many, I do think that there is a limit to how high this Tower of Babel can go. Because what happens in parallel with this advancement in AI is the transhumanist agenda, where this starts encroaching on the inside of our body. You'll remember just 2 or 3 years ago, Yuval Harari, our buddy, right? He was saying, in addition to outlandish things like, you're all useless meat eaters. Do you remember that? He also said, the end of privacy, just get over it. He said, we'll know everything about you, including what's happening inside your body. Well, hello. How does that happen exactly? So there's drastic change. And to me, as we talk about these parabolic curves that are happening right here, I think there is a limit. I think the Lord is absolutely on top of everything. I fully trust the timeline of our departure, the completion of our redemption, the fullness of our redemption will be soon. We don't know when, but it will be coming, because we just see it. We see everything right now. And I think all of our audience should be praying for those that, they suspect will be left behind. Pray for breakthroughs, pray for softening hearts for the things that are going to be observed today and in the near future, for that to be a wake-up call of sorts, so they start asking the right questions. And specifically for the Watchman community, be praying how you can be ready for this. How will you be the person that will raise their hand and say, I have been studying this for years, and I can help you decode what is happening in the world from a Bible prophecy point of view and help you connect the dots. It's a very large responsibility, and we have to be ready for that.
Amen.
So
Hey, let's
me-
remember,
go
by
ahead,
the way,
Patrick.
let me just add one thing. Remember in Genesis 6, 11:6, when it talks about Babel, God says, and the Lord said, indeed, the people are one, and they all have one language. Think computer language right now, like AI. And this is what they begin to do. Now, nothing that they propose to them to do will be withheld from them. We see this repeating from Genesis 6. These people they think nothing is going to be beyond them at this point, including even conquering death. Good luck with that.
They were talking about immortality coming in as little as 2 years, Patrick.
Yes.
Because
Exactly.
of the advancements in medicine. And don't forget our buddy Larry Ellison, who's been very, very quiet, but he's reared his head here recently. He is the founder of Oracle and is a very, very wealthy guy. But he's an OG when it comes to the system. Think of Oracle just like IBM. It's a fantastically used and sophisticated company that runs half the data in the world, or if not more. So he is saying that AI will be used to take your DNA sequencing to see the things that are wrong with you, and then using the AI medicine and material science and other things, it will custom tailor a mRNA vaccine for you. This is what he said at the Stargate announcement with Trump and Larry Ellison and the guy from SoftBank, Matsumoto-san or something like that. I may have hacked that name, but that you'll be injected with the solution coming from AI. And I have to tell you, that is probably where that limit is. I don't know that we're going to go through another Nephilim type, contamination of our DNA as human beings, before the rapture for sure. What happens with the mark of the beast after the fact, that explains why humans can no longer be redeemable after the mark. Taking the mark is a different matter. And the more you see what's happening in the technology, including biology, that type of stuff, the more you can actually more certainly see that maybe a genetic modification is what is responsible for that, because the people are not. I think it only takes a 2% alteration in DNA for us to distinguish between us and a monkey, if I remember the stats correctly. So it's just a very small nudge, and we're not Homo sapiens anymore.
Well, maybe that's true for you, but
So
good one, John. I'll give you a point for that.
It cracks me up too about everybody. All this time we've heard our evolutionary friends saying, "Oh, the junk DNA that we have," and I forget the creationists I heard say years ago. Well, if you think it's junk DNA, then go ahead and remove it and get back to me as to how. When I think it's the human body that God designed is far more complex, but it's interesting. I'll just share this. I think I've shared this before here. I don't know. My first experience with AI type thing was at a Israeli government Christian media summit in Jerusalem in December 2022. So 26 months ago, 27 months ago. And the business guy, Jonathan Medved, you can find the thing at the Israeli government press office, GPO YouTube channel. He got up and he said, this ChatGPT stuff, it just got rolled out a week ago. It's the fastest downloaded thing ever in the history of apps in the Apple Store. And then he said, this AI is going to be great. And then he said, it was kind of interesting, it kind of struck me because we're sitting in a hotel in Jerusalem. And he says, we will make the lame walk. And I thought, that sounds remarkably like what Jesus said to the disciples of John the Baptist, who came to him and said, are you the one, or should we look for another? He says, you go tell them the lame walk, the blind see, the deaf hear. And it just seemed like they were dragging in all of these messianic signs into this artificial intelligence. And by the way, Larry Ellison did do a a talk at interview at the World Government Summit with Tony Blair, and during that talk, he didn't really mention the mRNA thing, but he did mention that we want all of your data because then we will be able to take care of you. And in other words, it all comes down to data.
Mm-hmm.
So let's pivot in the time we have remaining. I want to do the AI church thing that our friend sent us. But let's talk about maybe Pete and Britt, you can jump into this. The defense application. And the reason I'm asking this is that last week in India, it seems like there's a huge tech conference every week where they talk about these things. And the theme, one of the major themes of that conference was developing sovereign AI. Each country should develop their sovereign AI, which I think, Patrick, that kind of goes along with the concerns you express about this data of our government being hoovered up. But where do you think this is going, Britt and Pete, and then everybody else who wants to join in terms of a defense, how this is going to be used on the military side?
I think it's going to be the standard going forward. I mean, before I left the service in 2020, for the previous 7 years, we've been doing MUM-T, which is manned-unmanned teaming between drones and Apaches and other attack platforms that were already pairing and doing all the working out the kinks. And that was, I don't know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago started. And that has only exponentially grown in the types of robotics that we've created, everything from the quadrupedal, the robot kind of dogs. We have centipedes. We have things that fly, things that crawl, things that go underground, subterranean, things that go in the water. Tiny bug, like fly on the wall type drones, nanotechnology, nano dust. I mean, it is just wild west stuff going on with the military applications. But I think the main thrust is going to be with laws, these lethal autonomous weapon systems that may or may not have a human in the decision-making cycle, but I think that they will increasingly have a higher success rate and lower collateral damage rate, and basically they'll weed the human out of the decision-making cycle. So right now the big shift has been away from traditional platforms of, like, say you want a jet like an F-35, and it takes 20 years to develop to get that jet from the idea out to the warfighter. They want to do more of the mosaic type of warfare where you have an existing platform, Apache, a drone, whatever, and you have some decision maker, and then you have the sensor, and the sensor is being now used through the internet, and everything that is connected to the internet can now be a sensor. So you don't have to wait 20 years to develop the next big thing that's probably going to be antiquated by the time it gets to the battlefield. Now you can use whatever existing thing you have, and your only weakness is the amount of internet connectivity that can connect you between the executor, the one that's doing the attack, the sensor that gets triggered, and it's going to be connected to the internet somewhere, and the decision maker. And they're slowly moving the humans out of the decision making process when it comes to warfare, and it's basically going to depersonalize and dehumanize the whole process.
Yeah, I think the place to see what's coming next is the battlefield between Russia and Ukraine, because everything's on the line. So when people have things on the line, if you're developing something and there's no pressing reason, well, maybe you leave at 4:00 that day. But when you're under the threat of maybe dying or losing a war, you work as much as you possibly can. And so we're seeing the limits pushed of military technology in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And what we're seeing going on right now, we've seen over the last several years, it quickly became a drone war. So both sides are using drones. Conventional weapons systems, as Pete just said, are obsolete. They're useless in the face of drones. But what's coming next is coordinated AI-controlled drone swarms. So you might have a person in the loop giving a large direction to those swarms, but we see companies in Ukraine like Swarmer, we see Saab in Europe that are developing these software platforms where you can have multiple drones, hundreds, if not, and potentially thousands and millions and billions of drones connected together that think with a hive mind. So if something happens to one drone in the swarm, they all know about it. They can all react accordingly, independently on the battlefield in real time. They can learn on the battlefield in real time. And so that makes these conventional weapons even more obsolete because they're trying to develop things like countermeasures to this using microwaves and lasers. But these are more of these conventional countermeasures that they're simply going to learn from and adapt to and conquer. And so I would anticipate we're going to see drones become smaller, more sophisticated, more powerful, to where essentially you would have swarms of bees, swarms of locusts that are completely under computerized control that can go do as you wish. And the key to all of this is production capacity, because as Pete was saying, the idea of spending 20 years putting together these conventional weapon systems, those days are gone. Where companies are investing, where nations are investing, is in the software and the AI that's going to control this. And they see the actual systems themselves as expendable because they're adapting so quickly. So what both Russia and Ukraine are struggling with is production capacity. How quickly can we bring these systems online? How quickly can we get them into the battlefield? And that's ultimately where molecular manufacturing, which is a technology that's, again, it's past the theoretical stage. We're in that applied stage where it's just a matter of when's it created, who's going to get to it first, would then have that. That's essentially Ralph Merkel, who's an expert in this field, calls molecular manufacturing the physical manifestation of the singularity. So you would be able to produce drone swarms in real time on the battlefield where you need them, when you need them, and you could have wave after wave coming after it. Whoever develops that, whatever nation or group of nations develops that, will be able to completely dominate the world. And I submit we'll have to avoid having a second power develop and create a conflict that could destroy the whole world. So they will use that advantage to simply conquer the world. And that lands perfectly with what we read in Revelation chapter 13, who can make war against the beast. And we have a global empire in Revelation 13:7. So I think that's where all of this is headed. We're in the early stages of drone warfare and drone swarms, but we're on an exponential curve, and that's going to change very, very quickly.
And don't forget, Britt, that you've got the second seal where there's war, that takes out a quarter of humanity, and that is very sobering. I think we've always thought of that as conventional warfare, but maybe the accelerant to that are these augmented drone systems and molecular manufacturing that can produce infinite number of whatever it is weapon that they want to at that point for very low cost.
Because once we get to that point, mutual assured destruction goes out the window. So that's why we've heard the conventional wisdom for decades has been there will be no World War III, because major powers nuclear powers going to war against each other is going to lead to annihilation of the globe. But mutual assured destruction is based on technologies that will soon become obsolete. And when they do, what's been holding back that global war goes out the window. And that very well could be what we're reading about in Revelation chapter 6.
Interesting. I was just going to point out that you mentioned drone swarms locally here in Columbus. There's a guy, he has the name that kind of comes out of Central Casting, I think. His name is Palmer Luckey. Donald Trump's, this is from the Wall Street Journal a few days ago. Palmer Luckey, Donald Trump's original tech bro, gets his moment. And he is a tech guy, heavily involved with Palantir and Peter Thiel. And I can't remember the guy's name who heads up Palantir, but he's now setting up a company here in the Columbus, Ohio area. They're going to hire 4,000 or 5,000 people. Initially, they're building a huge facility down in the southern part of the Columbus metro area to build drones. And it's a huge investment that's being made. So this is just having a big local impact here. So let me, I feel sometimes like when we get into these things, we get to this point, it's time for another commercial or something. And somebody in the comments said, we're going to need
praise and worship
time to get over this one.
Wish I could sing.
Yeah. Wait, I don't think you want us singing. That might be
you do
worse.
not want me singing, that's for sure.
So let's turn to this article that a friend of mine sent me today, because I think this is a good sort of part where we can wrap this up because of where this is going. Let me share the screen here. About the techno-utopian gospel church of AI. And, this has long been a concern of mine, and the growth of mysticism and other things in the church. We have a local church near us. They were very nice to us when Fellowship Bible Chapel started, but they've kind of gone a different way. And they're building a new facility. And I'm told that under the stage at this new church will be 50 subwoofers. So I'm not sure. I haven't got the stats yet on how powerful their fog machine is, but I think there may be a spiritual fog machine. I'm afraid I just don't like the way this is going. So let's talk a little bit. I shared this article with you guys shortly before we started tonight, and maybe Patrick, Scott, you can start off, and everybody else weigh in on where's this going for the church? What do we do? Patrick, I liked your comments about we need to be willing to lay it all down. And so we sit here and we talk about, this might make things a little more difficult for us. But then you go to the Congo, you go to Syria, and Christians are being slaughtered. I mean, they're laying it all down, their whole life and everything. And so what's the church to do? So you can get this article. I'll put a link in the show notes so you can see it at Prophecy Recon. But anyway, Patrick and Scott, why don't you lead us off, and then Britt and Pete, we can sort of wrap up with this tonight.
Yeah, exactly. This the propensity that humans have to worship is over the top. It always been. People have to worship something all the time. It appears. If you're not worshiping Christ and God, well, anything goes at that point. It could be a block of wood in your backyard. People, history of carved things out of wood and stone and gold and whatever to set up an idol to worship as God. And at this point, AI is so perfect for worship. It's intelligent. It can speak. All the other gods of history didn't speak to you. That was the one complaint that God said. Do your idols speak to you? Well, this one will speak to you, right? So you have a whole subset of people who see AI at this point as a growing intelligence who will know everything there is to know in the world about the world. In other words, it'll be omniscient. That's a quality of God. This is it's direct competition with God. And it won't have no mercy, no grace for sure, but nevertheless, it will understand the humans to the point where they can be counseled by this entity. And the world is going nuts over this. Maybe mostly Silicon Valley, but other people in the country and around the world, they're getting wind of it too. And there's actually a church of AI now. It's gaining traction. Go figure. You can kind of understand the people that are wandering around looking for wisdom anywhere. Well, AI at this point has more wisdom that they have. Let's go look at that. Let's figure out what is the AI God tell me what I should do with my life. It'll give you answers. You might not like them, but it'll give you answers. So it's definitely one step above your horoscope or the tea leaves or whatever. But nevertheless, this is going to be a big thing. And my guess, I could see this in the end. This will be the system that the false prophet will put up to cause the worship of the Antichrist in the end. And it'll be a total deception for sure. But at this point, even in this embryonic phase of AI, and this is still just the beginning, remember, even by the time Trump is done in office, AI will be at least 16,000 more times capable than it is right now. So you can see how people could mistake this as a representation of God. We have to figure some way individually how we can witness to these group of people that are going to be caught into this cult, if you will, because we've never had this kind of a cult before. And so those of you who have a penchant for trying to explain the cults to people, put your thinking cap on at this point. We have to have an answer. We have to understand first ourselves. We need to understand where these people are coming from and how can we speak to them about AI, because they're going to be hooked completely on the simulacra of illusion.
That's a very powerful point there, Patrick. I'd just like to add that the article talks about the Church of AI. Well, I think one of the co-founders of Uber, actually, when he was bought out or he sold his shares, whatever, he became a billionaire a couple times over. And he's the guy that started this Church of AI. And with the ability for AI to learn more about how to be expressive. Look at OpenAI's ChatGPT 4.5 that just came out last week. It is actually a better model now in terms of sounding more natural in terms of its responses to you now. If you put a voice on top of that text, so text to speech, which is getting scarily good right now, that you could see that the technology now supports a seduction. And that's what I characterize the Church of AI. It is a tool of Satan, let's be clear, to inject enough deception and seduction by being emotive, by understanding you, for being empathetic, for being an encourager. Like AI is the wind beneath my wings. How far do you want to go with this example? Because it will know you. It will know exactly what buttons to push in your little world to make you feel brighter and more competent and more confident in terms of tackling something new. And I could just see the AI saying, I'll help you with this. Come on, let's tackle this together. I mean, it's such a natural conversation. These things are coming and they're probably here. It's just they haven't landed all the way. One of the deterrents to this, other than the Holy Spirit as a restrainer, is character right AI, for example, which has the ability for you to talk to a AI persona. And there was a story not too long ago where a young man who was infatuated with an AI female, persona, actually took the advice of the AI when the AI suggested that it should be he should kill himself, and he did. There's lawsuits flying everywhere for that stuff. So there is some very scary things happening right now. But I see the Church of AI and the emergent AI as being probably the ultimate form of distraction and misdirection away from the gospel and towards universalism and love is love and all the other things that they talk about. Because if you're a Bible believing Christian, especially if you are sensitive to eschatology and you're awake right now as a true strong remnant functioning correctly right now in this season, then you're the enemy of this system, because you're shining. Just the very salt and light presence of the Holy Spirit is sufficient to cast this other thing as an impersonator. It's a false thing. And I think the Holy Spirit works in that dimension, if you can call it a dimension. So I think on our side, what I would recommend that we do is pray. And I love what you said, Patrick, about we should have a solution about a 4 spiritual laws that has the 4 steps for how to do apologetics when AI is this influential and this seductive. It's almost like the seduction of porn up on a completely different parabolic level. It'll appeal to people in a very, very dangerous way. And so you're right. We all need to be thinking about how to pray ahead of that stuff.
Okay, let's what I want to do, let's go Pete and then Britt, because Britt, I know you wrote about this years ago too, and maybe we'll use your remarks as kind of the wrap up. So Pete, any thoughts on where we are and what we need to do? You're on mute, I think.
Okay, sorry about that. One of the things I think is encouraging, even despite all of the technology we see racing ahead of us right now, is that at least even though the book of Revelation isn't a book on technology, the technological capabilities that it lists in there, the things that they're talking about doing now exceeds those things by magnitude, orders of magnitude. Going to Mars and setting up colonies, et cetera, et cetera. We know that God's not going to allow that to go that far. In the meantime, I do think that we're going to see things increasingly get to a stage that where, if you think back to Matthew 24:24, it says, there'll be false Christs and false prophets, and if possible, even the elect would be deceived. I think we're kind of at a stage now where it's getting really difficult to tell the difference between truth and lies with all of the increasingly realistic deceptions that are being put out by deepfakes, AI, all the different voice, video, pictures, news articles, etc. It's getting hard to differentiate, and so it's making it a much more challenging for the believer in the here and now to even discern what's true and what's not true. And that's where being indwelt not only by the Holy Spirit in your moment of salvation, but also being sensitive to the Holy Spirit's messages of discernment to you and giving you the right understanding in Scripture. You read it, you've read it 100 times, and now you read it this time, and something clicks with you. You're like, oh, I understand that, and it makes sense in the scenario where you might be found in. And I think that this side of the rapture, AI, in terms of the Church of AI and the spirituality, the synthetic spiritualism that's being associated with it, is going to keep running into roadblocks. But I think 1 second after the rapture, it is going to gain exponential church growth. And then on top of that, once Gog and Magog is over with, I believe that that's going to neutralize or neuter militant Islam, and those folks will fall in line just like the Hindus and everybody else that's left behind on the earth. And the only holdouts are going to be left are the remnant church or the remnant believers at that time, and the remnant of Israel that come to faith in the Messiah. And so they are going to still be under the gun of the Antichrist. And the fact that they are not going along with this global delusion is going to be why that target's drawn over them so tightly. And all the weapons that we've talked about, the drones, the nanobots, everything. I mean, the satellites, the space, the military applications, surveillance, the systems, every system tied in with the AI, ASI, whatever program it's going to be that becomes the beast program of record, as it were. All of that is making it almost impossible even now to escape from the clutches of world leadership. So multiply that times 1,000. There's going to be nowhere to hide on the other side of this. But I think the fact that the rapture removes the true believers, it leaves behind the false church, it leaves behind those who are pretending or playing church, it leaves behind all the other faith systems in the world, and then you have Gog Magog that removes militant Islam from the equation, and what's left is a world that's going to be ripe for coming together and blending everything together and coming into some kind of final digital or synthetic spiritual reality that culminates with the image of the beast, which I personally think, I don't know about anybody else on the panel, but I think that this AI program, whatever it ends up being, quantum, I think it's going to be possessed and be used by demonic forces to present this perception that it's alive and that it's sentient. But that's what I see coming.
Okay. Thanks, Pete. Britt, maybe we'll try to wrap up with you, and then
Sure.
I'll have a few closing comments after you finish up.
So yeah, this Church of AI, I went to the website, tried to figure out who is behind it. It wasn't very clear who the founders are, who's putting up the website. But Scott, you mentioned a former Uber engineer. There's a man named Anthony Lewandowski who worked for Google and Uber. And back in 2015, he founded a church called the Way of the Future that's principal aim was to worship AI. And he saw, well, AI is a God, and we need to worship it. It's going to be the supreme God. And it's his belief system that he had was really no different than what we read about in this Church of AI website. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's behind that, but although this is a common belief among many circles of transhumanists and people in Silicon Valley. But I think, again, ultimately where all this goes, it's human beings merging with AI. And I think it's increasingly looking likely that the Antichrist, this will be one of his primary tools. And you mentioned, John, the lame will walk, the blind will see. The Bible tells us in both Revelation and in 2 Thessalonians that the Antichrist will come with counterfeit miracles, the power of Satan. And the very term of the Antichrist means in place of Christ, instead of Christ. And so going into the era that we're going in of advanced technology, if the Antichrist is merged with this AI and he has all of this information, he will appear omniscient, omnipotent. He will appear godlike to people and be saying, I'm going to grant immortality. I've conquered the world. There will be no more war. I've brought peace. And end of disabilities, end of disease. We're going to end all of these things. And the Bible tells us where all of this heads, because we read in Revelation, it clearly tells us there are only born again Christians and everybody else worships the Antichrist. By the time we get to the second part of the tribulation, it tells us all the people of this world, those whose names were not written in the Lamb's book of life, worshipped the beast. And so there will only be two groups of people, just like Pete was saying, all the people of different religions today, they're all going to fall in line with this idea of worshiping Antichrist. And it's increasingly looking like that will take a form similar to this church of AI, where there will be the Antichrist in possession of AI, appearing godlike, telling people what they want to hear, and the world will worship that, all those whose names were not written in the Lamb's book of life. So born-again Christians will not do this. They will be the only ones standing in opposition to this, and everyone else will be worshiping Antichrist. So that's where all of this is headed.
Okay. Well, anyway, look, guys, I really appreciate you taking the time. We could go for many, many hours, but we try to keep it to a couple hours to respect the time of the audience. Everybody, if you would like, share, subscribe on my channel, on Britt's channel, and whoever else might be streaming this. I will repost this video under the videos tab on my YouTube channel, just because it's easier for people to find. And you can like, share, subscribe from there too. I know that people have different speaking engagements. Britt, I think you're doing this full time now, right?
Yes. Yeah. Totally full time now. In fact, I'll be in Grace Bible Church, Winchester, Kentucky this Saturday, if anybody's close by to that.
Okay. And I've got some speaking
Pete will be.
Yeah. Pam and I are, is Pete going to be there too?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to meet up this weekend.
And I think Pete and I were talking about doing a program together. I got next Wednesday, I'm going to do a roundtable on Israel with Olivier Melnick and Rob Schwartz. And I know I'm heading out to California with stops along the way in the South. I'll be at Calvary Chapel of Harbor on April 29th with Tom Hughes, at Rock Harbor Church with Brandon Holdhouse on April 30th. And I'll be speaking at a church in Okanagan, Washington on the first Sunday in May. If you don't know where Okanagan is, it's just down the road from Omak, Washington. So I know Patrick's got some speaking things anyway. So we really appreciate it. And just one other quick reminder, since I set it up, I can promote my own thing. I'm going to do a tour to Israel October 6th through 16th with a 5-day, we'll call it a Heartland intensive extension. If you're interested in that, there's a link to that on Fellowship Bible Chapel YouTube. And also, if you look in the show notes, the last couple Sundays, we put that up. There's a link to where you can get information on that. We are having people sign up already. So anyway, again, we really appreciate you people taking the time. We know that it's a privilege for us to talk to you, and we will sign off now. And I think that we'll let you know when the next one's scheduled. Everybody, thanks a lot and good night. Thank you, guys.